Welcome back to Mythic Slumber. Tonight we drift north, where auroras fold like silk and old songs ride the wind. Beyond frost and fir, past the roots of Yggdrasil, stands a golden hall whose rafters are spear shafts, and whose roof shines with shields. Valhalla, Odin's house of the honoured dead. Here, the brave wake after battle as if from a nap, rise unscarred, and feast beneath a sky of antlers and star smoke. Valkyries pour sweet mead. The boar Serimnir returns to the fire each night, and tomorrow's training waits at dawn. Close your eyes, let the hoofbeats fade. We're entering the Hall of the Slain. Before you step into the Golden Hall, the North asks you to lift your eyes. Above every roof line and ridge, above fjord and fir and frost-hushed meadow, rises the oldest architecture there is, a living tree whose crown grazes the aurora, and whose roots sip secrets from the deep. The Skalds call it Yggdrasil, the world tree, not a symbol, but a shared backbone. If you listen, truly listen, you can hear it working, sap like slow thunder, wood grain murmuring, a patience older than winter. 9 realms lean upon this tree the way villages lean upon a river. There is Asgard, bright with gold and judgment, where Aesir gods practice statecraft as carefully as they practice war. There is Midgard, our middle enclosure, ringed by sea and story, where boats remember the shape of their builders' hands. There is Vanaheim of older fertility and kindly weather, Jotunheim of mountain giants and arguments the size of storms, Alfheim where light elves tend delicate brightness, Svartalfheim where dark workers hammer out wonders, Muspel, a desert of flame that speaks in crackles, Niflheim, a hush of mist that speaks in none, and Hell, a stern grey keeping place where many honest souls go to rest. All of them, distant and different, are threaded by the same bark, the same breath, the same quiet insistence that everything has neighbours. At the centre of this great scaffolding sits a one-eyed god who has never stopped travelling. Odin is called All-Father, not because he sired every story, but because he adopts responsibility for how stories end. He wears many names the way a sailor wears many knots, each for a purpose, none for show. His ravens, Hugin and Munin, thought and memory, leave his shoulder at dawn and return at dusk to lay the day's evidence on the table. His wolves, Geri and Freaky, eat while he watches, for Odin feeds on knowledge. Food can wait, wisdom cannot. In his fist a spear named Gungnir that never asks permission to fly true. On his breast a knot of 3 interlocking triangles, the Valknut that makes warriors stand a little straighter, and poets choose their next word with care. Some gods arrive by gift, Odin arrives by price. He hung himself upon Yggdrasil's high bough, 9 nights in wind and indifference, pierced by his own spear, peering downward into a world that would not yet speak to him. He fasted until the quiet cracked and the runes rose from the dark like fish from a deep lake, slick with meaning. He took them, hands trembling not with fear but with recognition, and came down changed in the way mountain air changes you when you descend. The lungs are the same, the breath is not. Later, he knelt at Mimir's well where the roots drink the oldest news. A price for a sip, the well demanded. Odin left an eye in the water and gained a horizon he could not have reached with 2. This is the god who built Valhalla, Valhöll, the Hall of the Slain, not as a monument to gore but as a school for courage. He has read ahead. The end the North calls Ragnarok is not rumour or riddle to him. It is weather with the date he cannot see, only smell. Wolves will hunt the sun and win. Seas will climb their banks with the soldier's determination. The The good will die alongside the wicked because endings are not accountants. What then? Odin's answer is the hall, a place where valour is not used up once but practiced daily, sharpened and softened until it becomes a habit nations can inherit. Imagine approaching Asgard under a sky that is serious about blue. Bifrost, the bridge you must cross, is not merely a rainbow, it is order in an arc, the colours arranged like ranks that do not break. Heimdall stands his post there, golden-eyed and courteous, his hearing so keen he can detect the growth of a hair on a lamb. He is less a guard than a question. Are you coming as you? Those who pass do so with their names intact, polished by death into something the hall can pronounce without tripping. Beyond the bridge, a city of bright roofs and matter-of-fact splendour. No filigree, little waste. Shields hang where shingles would. Streets remember the sound of assembled feet. The air has an iron tang, but it is clean, like a blade washed and put away. And there, at the far end of a wide court, is a building that looks exactly as the stories promised, and not at all like anything you have seen. Valhalla. Roof shingled with round shields overlapping like scales, spears for rafters, benches long enough to seat an army without wings. Why a hall? Because the North trusts rooms where voices can agree. A lone warrior is a promise. A table full of them is an oath. In this place, death has changed the rules without changing the work. The chosen, Inarja, once men and women of Midgard who held their nerve when their nerve mattered, rise each morning to the field outside, measure themselves against one another, and fall laughing into clean wounds that close before dusk. At evening they return unscarred, as if battle were a difficult song they are learning to sing without going hoarse. The boar Sehrimnir offers himself to the cook's blade and mends himself on the bone. The goat Heidrun chews the leaves of Yggdrasil and pours mead as clear as advice. Valkyries move among the benches pouring, their presence neither flirtation nor threat, but a kind of bright audit. They have chosen you once. They will keep choosing you by the way you behave. But before all that cadence comes, a deeper setting still, the weave. 3 figures sit by Yggdrasil's roots near a well that smells like old rain. The Norns, Urda, Verdandi, Skuld, past, becoming, and debt to come, draw water and throw it high so it falls as frost upon the bark, keeping the tree from splitting. They carve runes, they knot threads, they do not lecture. Fate, in their hands, is not a chain but a fabric. You're a stitch in it, and your choices change the tension. Odin knows this. Valhalla knows this. The hall gathers those whose stitches hold even when the weave is tested by fear, hunger, and the guilt that visits after you do the hard, right thing that still hurts. What qualified you? Not numbers slain, but steadiness. Keeping an oath when it cramped your hand. Not abandoning the smaller body in a larger storm. Standing your ground in the press and when ground became impossible. Dying in a way that lent your comrades a longer breath. The North is practical. It knows that courage without kindness is a saw without a handle. In Odin's house, bragging may enter by the front door, but it is humility that finds a bed. Odin himself on the high seat does not glower like a thunderhead. He studies. One eye glints. The other remembers the cold of the well and smiles at the prices a fair one. The ravens come and go with their courier reports. Thought is crisp. Memory is warmed before serving. Sometimes he speaks. When he does, it is less decree than distillation. Make your strength a comfort, he tells a young warrior whose hands have not yet learned gentleness. Keep a friend who argues with you, he tells another who believes consent is proof of wisdom. Eat slowly. He says this last to everyone. Around him the other gods take their shifts at shaping the hall's manners. Tyr, who lost a hand to keep a promise, teaches lore that can stand in a wind. Thor, who has smashed more monsters than he has counted, does not teach anger. He teaches aim. Frigg, who knows outcomes by the taste of air, teaches the discipline of not telling everything you know. Freya visits, cloak of feathers whispering like rain, reminding Valhalla that half the honoured dead come to her Folkvanga, a meadow of rest, because victory wears many faces and not all are noisy. In the rafters, runes glow faintly, names and deeds. The wood does not worship them, it catalogues them so a newcomer can find where her own line might fit. The engravings tell simple truths the living often overcomplicate. Generosity travels farther than force. Fear is contagious, but so is calm. A shield held steady is a kind of music other shields can keep time to. A newcomer reading these lines feels something unclench. Death has ended many burdens. Responsibility endures, but it is shared now, and sharing is rest. You have not yet heard the hall at full voice, the clatter, the shouting contests that end in laughter, the low thrum of old friends retelling charges they will happily pay again tomorrow. That will come. For now, stand in the doorway and let the frame of the world fit you. A tree large enough to cradle storms, a god who pays for what he knows, a hall that trains bravery until it forgets to swagger. This is the North's overture, the stern kindness before the feast. The doors are wide, the benches are long, the roof is steady. When the last day comes, whenever it comes, no one here will be surprised. Until then, they will practice standing well and resting better, and telling the truth at a table that forgives you for trying again. And if sleep takes you as the ravens lift, let it. Thought will range, memory will return, the world tree will hold. Before there is singing in the hall, there is choosing in the smoke. The North teaches that courage does not simply arrive at Valhalla by habit. It is escorted, seen, weighed, and lifted by riders whose judgment is as clear as winter air. They are the Valkyries, Valkyrie, choosers of the slain. The title sounds stern, and it is, but it is also tender. They do not hunt death, they rescue meaning from it. Imagine a battlefield when the shouting has learned to tire. Snow in the gullies, iron scent in the wind, breath turning to ghosts as it leaves the mouth. A shield leans, a horn lies dumb in grass stamped flat by boots and fear. Between the last clash and the first silence, when men look for water or prayer, the sky gathers its own decision. You hear it before you see it, hoofbeats, as even as a drum that refuses to lie. Over the ridge, no thunder, no dramatics, only accuracy. A line of horses with manes like pale fire, their tack ringing with a sound you cannot place, because it is partly metal and partly approval. The Valkyries are not all alike, and that is part of their mercy. Some wear mail bright as noon on a fjord. Some wear furs that keep the warmth of a long embrace. Some come in swan cloaks, white feathers turned to motion, eyes thoughtful as shoreline water. Their hair may be gold or black or the red that berries keep for winter birds. The common thing is the look, awake, unsentimental, and kind. They are not here to admire wounds. They are here to read them. What do they read? Not score lines, not how many fell to your blade. They read steadiness. They remember if you held when the left broke and the right panicked, if you shared water and did not count the swallows, if you could hear your captain's voice when fear was composing its own orders in your head. They are not impressed by rage which looks large and burns out quick. They are impressed by the quiet that lets a hand do the next necessary thing: grip, lift, brace, while the mind refuses to bargain with dread. They also read what the living often miss: the kindness a fighter carried when no one was measuring. Did you spare a back turned by mistake? Did you take a step to shield a smaller body from a larger weather? Did you die between harm and someone who had not earned it? Valkyries notice these minor chords. They have stood too many evenings at the edge of too many fields not to know that glory, undiluted, curdles a heart. They prefer bravery that has learned manners. When they dismount, the horses go gentle as good bread. A Valkyrie will kneel in blood and mud without flinching or disdain. She will set a hand over a wound, and the ache will take a breath and steady. She may speak, and if she does, it will be practical counsel. "You fought well" is the most common sentence, and the second is, "We are not done." If you have a last message, she will carry it. If you have a last fear, she will set it straight with the economy of someone who has corrected the same worry 1,000 times. Often she says nothing at all, because presence is a language with its own grammar. Not every brave soul goes to Valhalla, and a Valkyrie will explain that without apology. Some are bound for Freya's Folkvanger, those whose courage kept households mended and harvests honest, whose gentleness was a stronger wall than any shield. Some will ride the sea road with Ran, because their last loyalty was to oar and keel. Some will go to Hel's stern house, where rest is the exact right shape for a life that was not a saga, but was faithful. The chooser's wisdom is the gate. She sees the life in full, not just the last hour's heat. And yes, there are tales of Valkyries who stayed too long among men, who loved and were loved in return, whose swan cloaks were hidden, whose freedom was delayed by longing's clumsy hands. Brynhilda's sleep behind a wall of fire, Sigrun's sorrow, Kara's brief blaze over a battlefield, names like embers that refuse to go cold. These stories remind us that even messengers can be caught by the message. But the deeper pattern remains. They return to the work because the work is mercy, shaped like selection. They choose, they carry, they teach. Teaching is the quiet half of the legend. Consider the way Valkyries move among the benches in Valhalla. They pour mead, yes, but they also pour counsel. A newcomer with too much boasting in the cup learns to leave room for other tongues. A veteran whose laughter hides an old shame learns to set the shame down and keep the laughter. A hothead who mistakes practice for proof is told, kindly, to show his patience at dawn, and his power only when dawn asks for it. The plain is for strength, a Valkyrie will say. The hall is for listening. On the field, the lesson begins earlier. From above, before they descend, Valkyries read formations like runes. They see where panic will travel first. They see where a captain's voice carries and where it dies. They notice the one fighter who turns his head to count friends and the other who forgets he has any. Later, when both sit warm and unbroken at Odin's table, they will remind them of this difference and press the habit of the first into the hand of the second. In this way, Valhalla produces not simply stronger warriors, but steadier companies. There is another thing. The choosing is not always for those who fall. Sometimes it is for those who must, against their preference, live. A Valkyrie will stand over a broken fighter who is not yet done with Midgard and say, "Breathe." She will press a hand and the bleeding will pause long enough for comrades to carry. Later, the spared soldier will speak of a bright figure seen through fog, of calm laid like a blanket over pain. The sagas do not always record these stayings of the hand, but villages do, and so do children whose parents came home because a chooser decided the hall could wait. Joining the ride is its own ritual and has no pomp. If you are chosen, the body remembers how to be light. The world tilts. The horse's shoulder is right there under your palm. You rise and the ground does what ground should do. It stays. On the way to Bifrost there is time enough for one look back, not to cling, but to bless. The Valkyrie will give you that look. She will not rush it. She has rehearsed the pace at which farewell becomes gratitude. Then the hooves catch rhythm, and the bridge takes you like a sentence that was always meant to be finished. Heimdall inclines his head. His horn is quiet. This is not the hour for alarms. The Valkyrie speaks your name. Hear that clearly. Not a title, not an epithet, not a number from a king's tally. Your name, cleaned of dirt and terror. In the saying, you arrive again, more yourself than you've been in years. The doors of Valhalla open their 500 mouths without creak or complaint. Inside, heat that respects you, light that finds the face you meant to have, voices that make room. Some evenings, a Valkyrie tells the hall what she saw that day. A woman holding the gate against 6 until help could do its job. A boy who handed his last water to an older man and said, "You've got father children." A berserker who held his rage like a hot iron and did not use it until the only right moment. She does not flatter. She reports. Reporting is how a culture decides what to praise. Valhalla learns. Tomorrow's trials will aim for those shapes. Do they ever weep? These sagas are shy about tears, but any craft practiced long enough earns its own compass of feeling. If a Valkyrie weeps, it is not for the dead. Those have been well placed. It is for the living who are brave and are not seen, for the fields where honour is quiet and hunger makes no ballads. When that sadness comes, they ride to Folkvanga and stand in Freya's meadow a moment, smelling clover and rain on clean earth, and they remember that the North keeps many kinds of welcome, not one. What do we keep of them, far from spears and winter? Perhaps this, that choosing can be sacred, that to notice rightly is to heal something. That selection without cruelty and judgment without contempt are crafts worth learning. A Valkyrie enters a room, any room, and asks without speaking, "Who here needs to be seen for their steadiness? Who here has carried more than their share? Who can be spared? Who must be sent?" If we practiced a gentler version of that at our own tables, many halls would grow brighter. So when you hear hooves in an old story, think not of doom, but of skill arriving. When you see a swan wheeling low over fog, think not of sorrow, but of escort. And when you rest tonight, if you must replay hard hours, set among them a rider who reads you clearly and lays a hand on the worst of it, until the worst learns for a while to be quiet. The North keeps such comforts. Valkyries are their shape. There is a road that does not show on maps, though every brave heart has traced part of it in the dark. It begins where breath grows thin and the din withdraws, after the last shout, after the last prayer remembered in pieces, after the hand unclenches because there is nothing left to grip. The world softens at the edges, weight sets itself down. A coolness arrives that is not cold the way evening arrives on a good summer day, with relief. If you listen, you hear hooves, even and unhurried, like a drummer keeping time for someone learning a new song. The horses step from mist as if the mist were their stable. Mane and feathered fetlock, shoulders higher than fear, eyes that have seen too many wars and have forgiven them without forgetting. The rider's hand, gloved steady, comes down to your shoulder, not to take, but to invite. The pain that was loud becomes a memory that knows how to behave. Names, the ones you wore at home and the one you kept to yourself, rise in your chest without the old ache. You can say them all and none of them hurt. Come, says the Valkyrie, and the word contains more road than any sentence you have heard. Rising is simple. You would think it would be hard, the way rising always was when the day had more demands than daylight. But here the body remembers a lighter grammar, how you climbed a fence as a child, how you mounted a friend's cart laughing, how you once stood from water and felt both smaller and cleaner. The saddle is there, the leather worn to honesty, the horse warm where winter cannot find you. Behind, the field arranges itself into stillness. Ahead, air thins to the kind that tastes faintly of snow and fire at once. The ride is not fast. It has the pace of someone who understands welcome. The ground unrolls without insisting on being noticed. Heather and rock, a creek that keeps its voice low, a stand of fir so straight the sky seems pleased with them. Now and then the Valkyrie speaks, not instruction, not interrogation, just the small conversation that reassures the newly unburdened heart that it is, still and again, itself. You stood, she might say. You shared. Or, you were frightened and you held. No rank is pronounced, no tally recited. The road honours particulars. Then a glow, not the glare of noon, but the brightness ovens give to kitchens in winter. The air ahead bends like a bow drawn across strings. Colour lifts from the horizon in precise bands, red that remembers berry and wound, gold like ripe barley, blue like fjord water late in the day. The bridge appears with the logic of a story reaching its chorus. Bifrost. It does not arc for show. It arcs as a statement of connection, one firm syllable between world and world. Its surface feels like stone that has learned to be light. Hooves ring a note older than steel and kinder. At the near post stands Heimdall. He looks not young and not old, as if time consults him before deciding what to do with a face. The horn at his side, Gjallarhorn, rests. This is not an hour for alarms. He does not block the way. He occupies it like a question you are glad to answer. His gaze takes in your whole story in one breath, but he does not pry. He reads as a skald reads a familiar lay, with respect for lines that were hard to sing. The Valkyrie speaks your name. In that saying, something settles. The bridge accepts your weight as if accepting were its profession. Across Bifrost you ride, and all the old distances lose their sting. Midgard falls behind the way ashore falls behind sailors who trust the boat and the hands in it. The sky changes quality, not brighter exactly, but more articulate. Clouds learn their shapes with better diction. Wind chooses a key and stays with it. On the far side, the land is built like a decision. Broad ways that not pompous, carvings that tell without boasting, halls that stand as if they mean to keep off weather for as long as weather is interesting. Asgard opens without fuss. Gods walk here, yes, but not as tyrants. They move like craftsmen who know their tools and keep them clean. You pass a courtyard where a boy, too young for saga, old enough for pride, tries on a borrowed helm and laughs at his own reflection. A woman with a smith's calm turns a blade in lamplight and shakes her head at a floor only she can see. A hound sleeps in sun that remembers battlefields but prefers gardens. There is commerce but not greed. There is brightness but not glare. A place that knows its business and does it kindly. And then a widening, a breath. a vista that will live in you even if everything else leaves. Valhalla at distance. Roof shingled with shields whose dents have learned to be decoration. Gables carved with beasts that once snarled and now merely warn the wind to behave. Doors, 500 of them, the songs say, set so wide no wave of comrades arriving could bunch up and bruise dignity. Smoke rises the way prayer rises when no one doubts it will be heard. Closer. The details multiply. The lintels wear runes like eyebrows, welcoming, exact, amused. Benches stretch within, oiled and ready for elbows. Somewhere out of sight a cook laughs, a clean laugh that says the boar will be ready when you are. A hum goes through the wall as if voices from other nights have soaked into the wood and are still singing low to themselves. From a high window, a raven regards you and decides to tell someone your expression. It takes off, black on bright. A moving word punctuating a sentence you have joined. Heimdall steps aside. You pass. The Valkyrie dismounts in one motion and holds out a hand that has steadied more souls than there are stars you can name. Walk, she says. It is the same word Merlin once said to another king in a different story, but here it means arrive. The threshold holds for a heartbeat, measuring. The plank knows how to read footsteps. Arrogance trips. Despair stumbles. Joy. Joy learns quickly. Yours finds its pace. You cross. Inside is light that prefers faces. It falls on scars and turns them into lines a cartographer might admire. It finds eyes and decides to stay. Heat lifts, not hard, not soft, like standing near a person who is glad you're here. A Valkyrie moves past with a picture and the calm of someone who never runs out. She does not test you. She welcomes you the way a harbour welcomes the boat that did not sink. A place is indicated, not at the end, not at the head, but in the honest middle, where companionship is easiest and laughter does not have to travel far to be caught. At the end of the hall, high but not aloof, the high seat. Odin sits with that posture you would recognise anywhere, the stance of someone who has paid and does not resent the price. One eye lively as a forge, one given to the well and therefore elsewhere. The spear is near, the wolves doze, the ravens practice returning. If he speaks, it will be brief. You will not be asked to argue your worth. The journey has done that. You will be asked to eat, to drink, to listen, to sleep, to rise, to train, to teach. Verbs that make kingdoms. Before the meal, a small custom. A bowl of water, clear as advice, held by a young warrior whose hands still remember hoe and oar. You dip your fingers and touch brow, chest, the old places where worry made its home. The water learns your story and decides to keep it safe. Across from you, someone you never met in life but often needed in battle. Steady, unshowy, nods once as if to say I was there, and you nod back as if to say I know. The floorboards approve with a sound that carpenters would call settling and poets would call agreement. If you listen closely, you can hear outside the first murmurs of the plain, steel greeting steel as morning practice limbers its wrists. Wounds will close by dusk. Pride, if it rises too fast, will be asked to sit and finish its porridge before it speaks. Boasting will be braided with responsibility until both are handsome. The mead will come sweet as the story you tell when you finally forgive yourself for being human. And when night lowers its antlers and the hall grows low-voiced, sleep will find you not because you are tired, but because you are safe. For now, though, rest in the doorway you have just crossed. Behind you, the bridge holds. Before you, the doors widen as if the hall has lungs and you are the air it was waiting to breathe. The road has one more step and you have taken it. The golden doors do not close behind the brave. They remain open, wide and patient for the next rider and the next and the next, until the hall is full enough to meet the last dawn with company. Stand close enough to the doors and you can feel the hall breathe, not with lungs but with the measured in and out of a place that knows its purpose. Valhalla is not delicate, it is precise. Everything you see has been argued into existence. Wood against iron, light against shadow, warmth against the long winter waiting outside. The first lesson in the architecture of glory is this: splendor serves stamina. Look up. The rafters are spears, not trophies, not clutter, structure. Each shaft still carries the straightness that once steadied a warrior's hand. Now those spears steady the roof, point to point, a forest of decisions set upside down and trusted to hold. Between them run crossbeams dark with age and oil, carved with shallow runes that read like carpenter's prayers: true, plumb, bare, last. If a storm sprints across Asgard and hammers at the shingles, the rafters do not flinch. They remember wind. They have already met it and learned its tricks. The roof is a shield field. Round shields overlap scale on scale, dents turned into design, old paint subdued to a mellow shine by smoke and years. Each circle catches the light at a different angle, so the whole roof glints like a slow rolling wave. In rain, the patter is soft, thousands of remembered blows returned as friendly percussion. In snow, silence piles kindly and the shields shoulder it as comrades. Between plates, fine seams of resin keep weather honest. The roof is not merely cover, it is story. It says, this many stood, this many held, this many now hold us. Step inside and notice the benches first. Long, generous, close enough for elbows to meet, and jokes to travel. Far enough for breathing room when memory needs it. The boards are thick, their edges eased by 1,000 shifts of weight. No thrown elbows into the middle. The high seat is high because sightlines matter, not because a neck needs stretching. At the ends of each bench notches the width of a knife mark where today's names will be cut. A quiet ritual. A newcomer learns the grain, asks a friend to place the first strokes, and finishes them with steady hands. The wood keeps a roll not of rank but of belonging. Light arrives layered. From the high slits under the eaves, day pours in pale and clean, catching dust motes that look like spare stars. From the hearth line down the centre, fire builds a weather of amber. Never frantic, always fed, its smoke coaxed along a dark spine of rafters toward chiselled vents. At dusk, iron sconces take their turn, each fitted with a dish to catch and throw the flame. No corner sulks, no glare bullies. Light is a citizen here, governed and governing, asked to show faces and leave them kind. Around the hall stand pillars that began as trees and never forgot it. You can still read the twist of their growth, the way they once turned towards sun, the way they shouldered storms. Carvers have let the wood tell its own story, adding only what the grain invites. A raven's head here, a knot of serpents there, a spray of barley where the rings decided to resemble harvest. Running along the pillar bases, waist high, are the low reliefs that skalds touch when words need help finding their way. Ships shouldered by seas, bridges in fog, the shy smile of a lover remembered by a warrior with poor memory for everything but that. The floor is deal and stone in companionable squares, a chessboard worn by feet rather than pieces. Near the doors, grit-scrubbed stone takes the worst of winter's boots. Toward the hearth, wood warms bones and stretches spines. Down the centre, a long strip of hammered copper runs underfoot, just broad enough to catch and carry the hall's music forward. When feet stamp in time, a toast, a chorus, a promise. The copper answers with a generous hum that says together louder than voices can manage alone. Listen, and you will notice how the place edits sound. A shout in anger cannot find corners to sharpen it. A cry of pain is immediately caught and muffled by fur and hand. Laughter travels, bright but not brash, and lands where it is needed. The hall was tuned for fellowship the way a harp is tuned for a scale. Merlin would have approved. Heimdall has nodded at it more than once. Odin, who prefers efficiency to ornament, has allowed himself the private luxury of pride. This room works. Above the hearth hangs the boar spit, part engineering, part theatre. Its axle is a wheel struck with 6 runes: turn, return, carve, spare, share, and enough. Each loop clicks softly as Serimnir offers tonight's lesson in abundance. There is always more when the purpose is training rather than waste. Behind, the mead lines glow with a steady gold as Heidrun's horn is drawn and redrawn. Each pour a small sun setting into a wooden cup. The cups themselves have weight, smooth-lipped, deep enough to encourage a sip, not a gulp. Mead here is for loosening the tongue to truth, not for losing the mind to noise. Along the walls, between the doorways, hang the shield staves, great racks where practice shields rest at night like dogs at their masters' boots. Their leather faces show scuffs like constellations. The staves creak a little in damp and settle when the fire grows old, making small home noises that help a newcomer's shoulders drop. A house that murmurs is a house that means well. Near the far end of the hall, a low dais, broad enough for council but not for distance, holds the high seat and 2 flanking chairs. Odin sits when seeing must be done. Tyr and Frigg take turns when judgment needs hands, the one who lost his hand to keep a promise, and the one who keeps her speech sheathed except when it saves lives. Behind them hangs a curtain of woven wool the colour of northern dusk. When counsel grows raw, or grief must be allowed to happen without audience, the curtain falls and the hall pretends not to hear. Privacy, like mead, is rationed with care. Look for the small craft. Hooks wrought like fish to hold cloaks, a row of pegs where helms hang like moons, a trough at ankle height filled with warm water where snowmelt can make peace with bone, a shelf where the day's letters rest, rune staves from Midgard, seals from Asgard's neighbours, a scrap of bark a child carved with the clumsy news of joy. The hall makes room for triviality on purpose. Trivialities teach the hands how to be gentle between bouts. Outside, set slightly downhill and to the lee, the smithy breathes like a second hearth. Its roof is slate, its mouth always open, its floor a spilled galaxy of sparks when night comes early. Here spearheads learn patience, and edges relearn humility. When a blade sings too brightly in the quench, the smith murmurs, "Hush," the way a friend murmurs to a friend who tells one joke too many. Metal takes correction. So do men. The hall and the forge share a language. Farther out, past the tilting shadows of practice dummies and the chalked circles where wrestlers test gravity, stands a long open shelter with racks of practice lances, padded helms and shields that will happily be hit. This is where morning begins. Lines form, the plane rings like a bell struck carefully, and the day gets the honest wake-up it deserves. Work first, boasting later, feasting last. From the shelter, a path of well-tamped earth returns to the side door so that sweat meets warmth without crossing the clean places. Whoever drew this plan had lived through enough winters to know the cost of wet feet. Back to the doors. Count them. Not literally 500. That is the Skuld's right to tall talk. But many, and all with a reason. Wide for companies, narrow for errands, a pair for quiet moments, a pair for loud ones. Hinges of bronze, leaf-shaped, pinned with pegs you could pull even if injured. No door demands 2 hands when one must be saved for a friend. Latch strings hang inside and out. Trust is a policy here, not a gamble. Follow the smoke holes with your eyes and you will find, just under the ridge where the roof meets sky, a gallery reachable by stair, slender, railed, made for watchers. From here the whole room is a map. Benches like roads, faces like fields, the hearth like a river running through. A skald will stand here sometimes to shape a story to the room's intake of breath. A sentry will take this place when the air tastes of weather, because better to know a gale 5 heartbeats early than 1 heartbeat late. The gallery is also where a new arrival can come on the first night if the hall feels too much. Up here the sound softens, the light gentles, and the truth that you are safe has time to persuade the truth that you are still alert. And everywhere, inscriptions, light touches of iron and bone and ink. Not scripture, not commandment. Reminders, over a wash basin. Clean hands keep sharp minds, above a rack of spears. Point only when ready to protect. On the lintel of the kitchen door, feed the quiet first. At the threshold, come in like weather, leave like weather, welcome and remembered. You will not notice them all at once. They will introduce themselves when needed, the way good counsel does. So the architecture teaches. It teaches with joinery and draught, with light and line, with seats that refuse to sort men into heights. It says that glory is heavy, so build handles. It says that courage is a flame, so stack your fuel. It says that laughter is structural. Beam it in, let it run, make space for its echoes. And it says that when the last day comes and the hall empties toward the plain, it will not mourn its purpose. Roof, rafter, shield, bench, hearth. They will have done what they were made to do. Hold a people in readiness and in rest. For now, let your palm rest on the nearest pillar. Feel the old tree leaning back into you, a pressure as gentle as agreement. Overhead, the shield roof hushes the small weather of your breath. Across the room, a Valkyrie tilts a pitcher and tips it back upright with the accuracy of someone who never spills courage. From the smithy, a hammer marks time that the heart happily copies. You are in a room built to remember you at your best and forgive you at your worst. This is what glory looks like when grown-ups design it. Usable, warm, repairable, and ready. Let the steady rhythm of Valhalla, the feast, the healing, and the rest settle over your mind. If this journey through the halls of the north is carrying you toward deep slumber, a gentle like or a quiet subscription is the honest declaration that helps more souls find the peace of Odin's great hall. Morning comes to Valhalla like a drum you can feel before you hear, not a harsh reveille, but a steadying pulse that rises from the practice field and threads through the hall's timbers. The first light creeps down the shield-shingled roof in bright coins. Smoke from the banked hearth peels back in gentle ribbons. A raven clocks the air outside, approves of the weather, and draws a lazy line toward Odin's high seat. Inside, men and women who once learned to wake to alarms now learn to wake to purpose. The plain is already awake. Frost freckles the grass in early seasons. In high summer, dew makes a brief kingdom of tiny mirrors. Stakes mark lines at measured intervals. Chalked circles hold yesterday's geometry. dummies wait with the patience of good teachers. The shelter along the edge creaks as bench is empty. Greaves are buckled with the unhurried competence of those who have outlived panic. Laces whisper. Leather remembers the shape of the same hands and goes soft. There is no trumpet. The signal is simpler. A single staff thumps the ground 3 times. Work, practice, begin, and the morning unspools. Pairs form and break, a murmuration of bodies finding each other's edges and intentions. Steel rings, but not yet sharp. Edges are blunted until noon. Blades kiss and part. Shields greet and slide. Spears learn their favourite angle all over again. In the corner nearest the smithy, wrestlers map gravity with shoulders and hips, discovering, every day as if new, that balance is a democracy of small bones. Instruction is constant and never cruel. A Valkyrie moves along the lines like clarity arriving. Left foot a palm width more forward. She taps a boot. The stance changes. The strike that used to wander suddenly knows its destination. Breathe out here, she tells another, and the parry that was late becomes timely. A veteran who once taught with sarcasm has forgotten how. He demonstrates with the impatience boiled off, leaving only the sauce, thick, nourishing, precise. Laughter travels quickly, pride travels slowly. Both find their right portion. Out beyond the circles, 2 figures fence without the ritual of counting touches. Thor with a hammer's mind, a knight with a scholar's curiosity. Thor's blows look like weather, the knight's like solutions. They break and grin, a shared admission that each will borrow a thing from the other before the week is out. Tyr walks the periphery with his one hand clasped behind his back, this stump visible and unpitiable. He corrects footwork and occasionally law. You pressed advantage beyond necessity, useful in war, unfit for justice. The pupil reddens, salutes, tries again. Bruises bloom like small schools of fish under skin, harmless and instructive. When someone falls hard enough for the air to jump from their lungs, 2 hands, one friend's, one teacher's, arrive without scold. No one is asked to prove bravado. Everyone is asked to locate composure. The plane sounds like a smithy set to music. Ring, thud, hiss, breath, and the low hum of voices reporting truthfully what just happened. The hum is a cure for exaggeration. Near mid-morning the edges come off the edges, blades are sharpened, shields swap for their sterner cousins. The staff thumps again. Now the bouts tighten. Timing, which earlier had the puppy eagerness of youth, chooses adulthood. Lines advance, retire, kink, straighten, learn to accept contradiction. A shout lifts, shield to friend, and the company turns like a school of fish that refuses the net. Those who once loved the lone charge discover the mutiny of their old preference. They find the appetite for formation instead. A berserker, sweat bright on his brow, pauses mid-roar to check a neighbour's stance and finds that looking outward does not diminish his thunder. Risk, moderated all morning, takes its rightful seat at the table around noon. A cut lands that would have ended a life in Midgard. The recipient sags, grimaces, then grins as warmth floods the sight, and pain learns its manners. In Valhalla, the body studies failure without the penalty of ending. The lesson enters the bones deeper. Because shame is barred at the door and curiosity is fed first. Again, says the struck fighter, and the word contains both apology and invitation. The partner nods and finds the same attack with cleaner intent. The defense appears before it is needed, a small miracle anyone can earn by trying thrice. When the sun reaches the roofline's lower edge, practice shifts into story. Skalds climb the gallery and narrate the morning's best correction, as if recounting a hero's deed. See how Hafrid turned her shield into a door and invited the strike to leave, the poet calls. Laughter and approval meet in the same throat. Do that, says the room, without saying it. A dozen wrists learn the motion at once. Culture is a choreography rehearsed until kindness becomes reflex. Then, the staff thumps a third time. Work yields to water. Buckles unhook. Helms swing to pegs, and the line to the trough travels fast and orderly. Steam wicks from hair and collarbones, talk loosens. The day stops requiring armour and starts requiring appetite. The path to the side door threads between the smell of clean sweat and the sound of small aches being catalogued in tones that hold humour like a splint. "I'll feel that," says one. "You earned it," says another. The compliments here are precise. No one praises vaguely. Praise, like edge, is kept sharp and used rarely enough to matter. Inside, the hearth has been thinking about this moment all day. The air throws amber across cheekbones and along the grain of the long benches. Serimnir turns on the spit, skin crisping, fat weeping in contented arithmetic. The runed wheel clicks. Turn, return, carve, spare, share, enough. And each click feels like a page turned in a book you never tire of reading. Hadron's horn is open. Mead travels like a good rumour, quickly, sweetly, without silt. Bread arrives in honest loaves, the crust talking when you press it, the crumb grateful under thumb. Bowls of greens carry the taste of a meadow's logic. Roots roasted in their jackets remind you that heat can be kindness when it is patient. The seating is not random. You find your place by happenstance and design. A first week arrival is placed between a seasoned archer and a skald who can set any story down gently without breaking it. Across sits a shield brother from a lifetime ago and a stranger whose silence turns out to be discernment, not shyness. The bench teaches, you must learn to speak to three kinds of listener. One who knows your tale, one who doubts it, one who can improve it. The hall makes a classroom of fellowship. Before the blade bites the boar, a quiet custom returns, a round of thanks that is not piety so much as hygiene. One stands and names a correction they received that morning, and the hand that gave it. Another names a fear that visited and the laugh that sent it away. Another names the dead, not to anchor the room in grief, but to remind it that effort continues in good company. The names are received like salt, sprinkled, necessary, honest. Odin listens with the face of an accountant who enjoys a ledger that balances both sides. Feasting is not gluttony. It is rehearsal for generosity. Valkyries pour without haste. The cup's weight argues successfully against foolishness. Songs begin, not shouted, but lifted like boats. First line tentative, second certain, third a shared wind. Versus honour repairs, bridges, backs, friendships. A new stanza slides in from the far bench describing a morning's wrestling bout where pride went down and grace got the pin. The hall laughs with recognition. Skalds take notes. Tomorrow's versions will be better told but not kinder. Evening keeps its appointment. The fire narrows to a core. The rafters glow faintly as if the spears remember starlight. Those with letters go to the shelf and find news. Carved sticks from Midgard marked with births, harvests, the new bell in the steeple, the old dog finally sleeping for good. Someone reads aloud a child's crooked runes. I lost a tooth and did not cry. Is that brave? 50 veterans answer in one practiced voice. Yes, and the hall records the vote in warmth. Before rest there is mending. The infirmary is not far. its light a little bluer, its humour softer. Salves smell of pine and a sweetness that clings to clean linen. Healers, some who wore mail yesterday, some who never did, move with competence you could lean on. They tape a wrist, reset a thumb, unlace a stubborn boot where an ankle objects, and remind the body what tomorrow expects. Mobility, not heroics. A knight with a split lip peers into a polished plate, laughs at the shape his mouth makes, thanks the healer for practicing neat stitches. Pain, that old talker, learns to whisper. Then, the hall again, but gentled. Benches empty slowly. Conversations taper. A few drift to the gallery for a cooler view. A few to the doors to sniff the evening and count what stars have time to be counted. Odin stands once, late, and the room quiets with that pleasant hush people offer a familiar storyteller. He says little. Good work, perhaps, or keep your wrists easy, or a memory of a field where a small correction saved a great many. The hall answers not with applause, but with the audible exhale of people who like their work and their bed in equal measure. Sleep in Valhalla is not collapse. It is a choice accepted by a body that trusts the next day. Blankets carry the scent of cedar and iron. Pillows the loft of geese who have never been hurried. Snores form choirs of comic timing. A few dream of yesterday's drills and wake with a wrist twitch that makes them smile. A few dream of farms or boats or streets that have learned to be safe. A raven adjusts on a rafter, feather against feather, and closes an eye. He has a report to make in the morning, for now the news can wait. So the rhythm sets. Fight to learn, heal to remember, feast to belong, rest to be ready. It is a liturgy of usefulness, a calendar kept in muscle and song. Days link like mail, each ring made strong by the ones beside it. In a hall built for last dawns, the ordinary day is the true miracle. You rise, you practice, you eat, you laugh, you mend, you sleep. You become, by repetition, the kind of courage the world can borrow when weather turns. A warrior can learn the angle of a shield in a morning. He can learn the timing of a parry in a week. But the North keeps harder lessons that require seasons. What to promise, what to risk, and how to live with the thread that runs through all things. In Valhalla, these are not lectures carved on stone. They are habits carved on bone. Oath, luck, and wyrd. They share the same table and pour from the same horn. An oath here is not a flourish. It is a measurement. Words weigh something in the hall, and you can feel the heft in your palm before you speak. You pledge sparingly, like a smith using oil, enough to keep the work true, never so much the handle slips. At dawn, before the bouts begin, a captain will set his hand on a bench scarred by earlier vows, and say one sentence for all to borrow. We will hit as hard as we must. Spare as much as we can, and be accountable by supper. It is not fancy, but it is exact, and exactness is what oaths ask of the mouth. Oath-breaking is not only a crime here, it is a structural failure, like cutting a rafter for kindling. The hall survives it, but it remembers. Between vows and outcomes moves a creature people call luck, and Valhalla trains you not to flatter it. Fortune is welcomed like a neighbour with bread. You thank it, you share it. But you do not ask it to do your chores. If a blow deflects off your rim because the leather happened to be supple at that spot, you nod at luck, and then you oil the rim that night. If the throw you misjudged lands clean because a gust of air went your way, you do not praise the gust. You practice the throw until wind is extra, not excuse. When a morning goes too well, someone will mutter good, Now pay attention, because nothing grows faster than overconfidence fed on second helpings of chance. The scolds tease luck out of the tale the way a cook skims fat. Leave a little for flavour, not a slick that drowns the broth. Wyrd is not luck's cousin, it is luck's canvas. The word tastes old and right in the mouth, like bread without spice. It means the woven shape of things, what has been, what is becoming, and what stands waiting with its arms folded, patient, inevitable. The Norns keep it near the roots of Yggdrasil, and the water that preserves the bark falls across it every day. In Valhalla, wyrd is not a chain dragging you, it is the fabric that holds when you lean. You learn to tug at your own thread with dignity. Pull too hard, panic, pride, despair, and the cloth distorts. Pull with rhythm, practice, mercy, resolve, and you feel other threads answer, tightening the whole. This is why courage here looks modest from a distance. It is calibrated for the weave, not for the crowd. Boasting tests the weave every night. There is a ritual to it, and the ritual saves everyone. After mead softens ribs, and the day's bruises declare themselves paid, someone rises with a grin and a scar and declares the great thing he did at first light. The bench calls for the counter-tale, the mistake, the rescue, the moment his friend kept him from making beauty foolish. Laughter arrives, not to humiliate, but to file the boast to a tool's edge. By the time the skald repeats the feat for the hall's memory, the names are in, the debt is counted, and the glory sits where it can't slide, on the shared shelf. Boasting without this rhythm would swell the room until the doors warped. With it, pride becomes inventory. What we have on hand, what we borrowed, what we must return. Luck is also trained with games, and the games are honest. Dice click on tabletops carved with shallow bowls so rolls stay visible and cannot wander into shadows. Rune sticks clatter, are lifted, are read aloud by two voices, one to announce, one to affirm. Boards with fox and geese, tearful, and carved ships keep hands busy while minds learn patience. Cheating is a sin here not because it breaks a rule, but because it blasphemes practice. A cheat is saying training is not enough for me unless I bend the world. Once caught, a cheater is not whipped out the door. He is sentenced to a season of instruction to the newest in the hall, because nothing cures the hand like having to teach it. Wyrd's stern kindness shows up strongest in restraint. The hall has a name for the moment when strength threatens to become theatre, the red edge. A Valkyrie will say it in passing, red edge, with a little tap to the rim of your cup. You will know what she means. You felt it at noon when your arm wanted to keep hitting after the lesson was learned. You felt it that night when your tongue wanted one more clever twist that would have made your friend small. The red edge is the point at which the weave thins under pressure. Step back, and the pattern holds. Tyr teaches this by standing at your shoulder during judgment and saying only enough. Thor teaches it by landing a blow half an inch shy of your jaw, smiling, and making you grateful for control greater than power. Oaths are tested most brutally when fear visits, and fear is treated here like weather, neither mocked nor obeyed. If your hands shake, the healer will give you the tea that smells of pine and tells nerves to sit. If your voice fails, the skald will let you use his until yours returns. If you panic on the plain, you will be paired tomorrow with the slowest, steadiest fighter, and you will learn that steadiness is contagious too. Then, when someone else breaks, you will pay the loan forward without speech. This is oath in its second form, not the spoken vow, but the reflex to shelter. Luck is courted in small courtesies. You oil your boots and sweep the grit from your scabbard, and luck, in a good mood, finds you respectable and stops by. You say the names of the dead before a hard day, and luck, feeling seen, stays to listen. Before sleep, you set tomorrow's kit where your hands can find it in the dark, and luck, liking order, doesn't hide your buckles. None of this is superstition. It is choreography for a partner you do not control. The partner follows better when the steps are clear. The old runes sit on a shelf where anyone can borrow them, not for telling fortunes, but for telling truth. A newcomer shakes the pouch, paws, and reads out a shape that says stand firm, or another that says soften, or a third that says wait. Odin watches from the high seat with the look of a craftsman who refuses to flatter the apprentice. He has hung for knowledge and paid for drink. He will not cheapen either by pretending fate is a menu. When your spread reads storm, he nods once and points at the door that leads to practice. When your spread reads harvest, he nods once and points at the door that leads to sharing. The hall's law binds oaths to outcomes. If you vow to guard a door and fail without cause, you will find yourself assigned to doors for a month until boredom cures inattention. If you boast a kill that another made, the skalds will write a song in which your name rhymes with almost, and you will laugh with everyone while learning to prefer a different rhyme. If you break a confidence and call it honesty, Frigg will sit you down and teach you the difference between truth and compulsion until your tongue understands the value of sheath. Wyrd loves those who mend their own holes. You can feel the cloth thicken around the mender. On winter nights, when the snow hushes even the ravens, the hall tells stories of those who made their oaths too heavy and shattered. Of those who wooed luck like a god and were abandoned when luck, being only weather, rolled on. Of those who used wyrd as an excuse to be cruel and learned that the loom forgets no hand. The moral is never despair. It is accountability. The North's mercy is muscular. It will help you lift what you dropped, but it will not pretend someone else dropped it. In the morning, the lessons reset as simply as bread and salt. Hands on wood, one short vow, boots on earth, one steady drill, eyes up to the rafters, one reminder that spears now hold a roof because someone decided to change how they were used. That is wyrd at its kindest, when an old instrument finds a new task and the pattern improves. Oaths, luck, wyrd, promise, weather, weave, teach you to make courage repeatable. You do not pray for easy days here. You practice for honest ones. And honest days, multiplied, become the only blessing that lasts. When sleep comes and your thoughts start to wander like deer at the edge of the tree line, you will remember a corner of the day when all three sat down together. The moment your friend trusted you with a secret and you kept it. The lucky slip that spared your lip, and the evening oil that made luck less necessary. The sense that something larger than your choice approved of the choice you made. You will turn on your side, feel the blanket's weight like a promise kept, and understand without words that the fabric is holding. That is wyrd's lullaby. That is the hall's reward. And that is how a people learn to be brave again tomorrow without asking the world to be kind first. Valhalla is bright, but it is not the whole sky. The North is careful with its welcomes and keeps many doors. Honour wears more than one shape, and rest is tailored to the work a life has loved. So the skalds tell it plain. Not all worthy souls wake under shield light. Some open their eyes to meadow sun, some to grey hush, some to sea glow under green windows of water, some to the friendly dark of a hill where ancestors keep each other warm. This is not banishment. it is fit. Begin with the gentlest brightness, Freya's field. Folkvanger, the people's field, lies where wind remembers flowers as doesn't brag about it. If Valhalla is a hall for practice, Folkvanger is a meadow for mending. Freya receives half the honoured dead, say the old lines, and the numbers are not argument, they are respect. Her hall, Sessrumnir, stands wide and low like a promise a mother can keep. The doors are many, but they don't need to be tall. People enter here with the posture of those who have fought long wars that had no banners, births and burials, winters where bread was a miracle you had to bake again tomorrow, marriages held steady by hands that learned each other's weather. The grass in Folkvanger has a memory. It springs back beneath tired feet as if happy to be chosen. Bees work without hurry. Cattle breathe like bellows that have learned to sing. Here, warriors whose courage was to stay rather than charge find their element. Shieldmaidens who spent as many hours lifting children as lifting shields learn that the meadow knows the weight of both. The songs are closer to lullabies than battle chants, but they have backbone. They keep time with the old. Strong chores, card, spin, knead, mend, teach. Freya walks among her guests with a gaze that has seen both grief and gold, without letting either turn her foolish. Her necklace Brisingamen glows like sunrise on fresh milk. When she laughs, a child stops crying somewhere, and a fox reconsiders theft and decides to try charm instead. There are bouts here too, but they look like stories healing their edges. Someone who never got to finish a tale sets the last paragraph in place and sees how the ending behaves. Someone who loved and lost speaks the beloved's name into a bowl of water and watches the ripples bow. A woman who carried a village on her back the year the men did not return lets the meadow carry her for once, and the turf does it gladly. When the raven passes overhead, it flies lower for Freya and tips one wing, as if even Odin's eyes have learned deference where the field is sovereign. Turn now to a quieter country, the grey house whose name has scared many and comforted more. Hell's realm is not a furnace for villains in these northern ways. It is a keeping place for the large majority who died as we most often do. In bed, in age, in sickness, in the middle of chores, with more kindness in their ledger than hymns can count. The road there runs north and down, across a bridge that sounds like iron thinking. Garma, the hound, watches with the patience of stone that can move. Hel herself, daughter of Loki by some tellings, presides neither cruelly nor soft. One side of her face is living. The other tells the truth about endings. She is not ashamed of either. Her hall, Eljudnir, has high rafters to make room for sorrow to stretch its legs without becoming a tyrant. Here, the food tastes of roots and steadiness. Here, the talks are long and low. Old quarrels are set on the table like bread, divided into slices, and chewed until they are small enough to swallow. People who never learn to rest learn it the way you learn a new craft. By repetition, mistakes, correction, patient tutors. In the corner, a weaver shows a farmer how to shuttle grief through warp and weft, so it makes pattern instead of noise. In another, a child who left too early finds elders who will be children with him until he is ready to be anything else. There is no rush. Time in Hel's house keeps a respectful pace. When travellers of goodwill come from other halls to visit the quiet, they leave with their courage gentled and their strength newly housebroken. Between meadow and grey house rolls the sea, and the sea has its own hall, a moving, glittering guest room where the drowned belong not to sorrow, but to the discipline of tides. Ran keeps this place, net on her arm, 9 daughters schooling the currents, sailors who went under with oaths on their tongues instead of curses, wake to a ceiling of green glass and a floor of slow light. The benches are rope twisted, the cups have salt along the rim and laughter along the handle. Here the talk is weather, sounding, storm grammar, the exact taste of an oncoming squall. Dead mariners teach each other kindness toward wind they cannot bribe, and the sea returns the kindness with fair crossings when it can. When a longship founders in Midgard and every hand is not saved, those who drop through the last grey into blue discover that hospitality works underwater too. There are nets here that never take fish, only fear. It is not all halls. Some worthy souls prefer hills. Under mounds tufted with thyme and sheep chatter, ancestors keep barrows like pantries of memory. The air is peat sweet. Tables hold clay pots that remember the heat of cooking fires long gone. Within, you may sit with a great-grandmother whose hands show you how she braided bread the day the river froze, or a great-grandfather who teaches you the old song for finding a lost calf, and, without fuss, the older song for finding a lost courage. In these houses, names are tools. They fit the hand, they work the memory, they tighten the weave between living and dead. Sometimes a warrior from Valhalla will ask leave to visit a mound, and will come back with a new calm or a joke so old it has become new again. The permissions cross easily among the doors. The north is communal even in its afters. What of the outliers, the tricksters, the difficult and necessary? Loki wanders, and those who share his crooked hunger for novelty find themselves, at times, in small annexes where mischief is taught to make rather than break. A lamp is taken apart and reassembled into a better lamp. A lock learns to keep thieves out and let children in. The class is noisy, there are burns and apologies, and by the end the room has invented 3 new verbs, and the cure for a minor inconvenience no one had words for before. Even this has a place, because a world without surprise is a box, and boxes are for storing, not living. All these doors share couriers. Valkyries ride past field and barrow, wave to the sea sisters, nod to Garma, carry news to Odin and to Freya both. Their saddlebags hold letters written on birch bark in a child's hand, rune sticks cut by the careful, a piece of net mended for the last time and sent to those who will understand the gesture. Ravens skim, sharing air with swans, swapping directions as easily as 2 friends trading hats. In the high halls where policy is hammered, and the low houses where grief is folded, the messengers are trusted because they have never once mistaken hurry for honour. If you listen, stories agree on one more kindness: movement. A soul, having learned what it needed in one place, may ask to see another. A wall opens, a path appears. A boat drifts to a shore that wasn't there yesterday and is precisely there today. A shield-bearer who has practiced enough in Valhalla to soften his power may walk into the meadow and learn how to set down his strength without fear. A mother who has rested under Hell's grey and found her breath again may ride to Sessrumnir and laugh like a girl. A sailor who can finally watch a storm without clenching his jaw may step into the barrow and teach a child to tie a knot that won't slip. The aged poet who finally has the silence he craved in Bifrost may descend to the whispering fields to hear the earth's own oldest rhythm. A weaver who found the missing thread of her life in Sessrumnir may take a road to Valhalla to watch the bright warp and weft of heroic action. It is not promotion or demotion. It is completion, a final, generous turning that allows every seed of the self to find its true sun. What then does chosen mean in such a map? Not better than. Fitted to. The chooser's hand knows the grain. A life that's spent itself in the loud mercy of battle belongs where steel and laughter are both tools, where the sound of clashing bronze is a familiar, comforting music. A life that spent itself in the quiet mercy of keeping a table set against despair belongs where bread rises reliably, and the stories don't need to raise their voices, where the scent of hearth smoke is a promise, not a warning. A life that spent itself watching a horizon, scanning for threat or hope, belongs where the horizon is friendly, an open, welcoming arc of blue. A life that needs, first, to be allowed to be sad belongs where sadness has a chair and a blanket and tea with something sweet, where grief is not rushed but given room to breathe and settle. And a life that has more than one of these in it, most lives do, will be given time enough to visit every room its courage can use, passing through doors that shimmer with the lessons learned and the strengths gained. So, when you think of the North beyond the last breath, think less of ranking and more of resonance. Halls that echo the heart's best work, where the laughter is deep and the mead is never empty. Meadows that answer weariness with milk and sun, with a quiet that sinks into the bone and makes the spirit whole again. Waters that turn fear into seamanship, teaching the hand to be steady and the eye to be clear even when the waves run high. Hills that keep the names warm, etching the memory of every life into the ancient stone. Valhalla is a song in a larger choir, a bright, powerful note in a grander harmony, and the choir sings toward a last dawn. None of these places fear, a future of perfect understanding. The doors stand open to one another. The gods visit like good neighbours, sharing stories and cups of welcome across the borders of their halls. Even the grey house smiles sometimes, and the smile is not sinister. It is approval of a people that remember to make many kinds of welcome for many kinds of bravery, honouring the journey as much as the end. It is the wisdom of a people who knew that the spirit, like the seasons, must be allowed to change its place and purpose until it finds its final, perfect peace. And if tonight your pillow feels like a ship's deck, or a bench end, or a tuft of meadow grass, consider this a rehearsal. You're being fitted even now for the room where your best work will be honoured, and your worst heaviness brought to a scale that knows how to measure. The Hall of the Slain is real, so are the other rooms. No good life is lost in a world large enough to keep promise in several directions at once. The North keeps courage in many shapes, and some of the steadiest wear braids in mail. Long before a skald names a charge or a king lifts a cup, there is the work of women who train their hands to the same disciplines as steel: accuracy, mercy, and measure. They are shield maidens when the field calls them, healers when the hall needs mending, stewards when winter wants accounts, and always, quietly, teachers. If Valhalla is a school for bravery, these are its most exact instructors, the ones who correct your stance with 2 fingers and your pride with a raised eyebrow that somehow does not bruise. On the morning plain, you see them by the way space behaves around them. Noise grows polite. Boasting remembers its inside voice. A young fighter winds himself tight as a bowstring. A shield maiden steps close, untangles one elbow, lowers one shoulder, and the blow he throws stops arriving angry and starts arriving true. Aim is kindness, she says. Not because the enemy deserves softness, but because truth delivered cleanly ends sooner, and the field spends fewer lives buying clarity. She will spar until his wrists remember the new grammar. Then she sends him to teach a smaller friend. because knowledge that passes through service roots deeper than knowledge that sits in the chest and glows. Their shields tell stories, not trophies, those are for walls, but careful repairs, rim-wrapped twice where a spear liked to look for entry, centre boss polished smooth where habit meets habit, paint retouched after storms with the same patience you'd use on a child's toy. When a line quivers, a shield maiden steps into the seam like a stitch, sets her board, and the wobble forgets to continue. On your right, she says, and the fighter there learns forever how comfort can travel along wood. Many trained first at chores. They lifted buckets before blades, counted lambs before lances, read weather on the faces of rivers and babies. All that comes to the field wrapped as instinct. A shield maiden feels the day turn 5 breaths before the rest, and calls the pivot early. 2 small moves later, a rout never happens. Another looks down at trampled earth, reads the mud's arguments, this patch slick, that patch stubborn, and shifts the line 3 boot-length uphill where luck can trip over preparation. You could call it magic and be lazy. Better to call it literacy. The world writes its intentions everywhere. They learn to read them while other people were making speeches. In the hall, their wisdom changes tools. Overbred, a shield maiden listens to a brag gallop toward unkindness, and reins it without scolding. Name the help, she says, and the room smiles as the tale grows hands and faces instead of a single bright hero. At the infirmary bench, one unlaces a boot with the calm that pain borrows. Her salve smells of pine and a leaf you cannot name, and after a breath do not need to. She sets a broken finger straight and tells a story about a raven who miscounted and learned humility from a fox. The patient laughs, and the body agrees to heal a little faster. Craft and story travel together. Both get there on time. They do not make romance their curriculum, though songs will try. Love visits everyone who is useful long enough, and sometimes it stays. When it does, they keep it with the same skills they keep a shield. Regular oil, honest inspection, quick repair when cracks appear, no vanity about dents. When love becomes a weather that interferes with duty, they do not melodramatize the parting. They set it on a shelf marked later and go to drill. Later, if it is truly later, will still be there. With Valkyries they share more than a stable. The choosers ride the dusk, the shield maidens the morning, and between them a culture learns what to praise. A Valkyrie will point at a fighter and say, "He stood where standing saved 3," and a shield maiden will nod and add, "And yesterday he fetched water before he was asked." Together they calibrate the hall's appetite so it does not grow drunk on spectacle. If a newcomer tries to buy approval with noise, a Valkyrie pours only half a cup and a shield maiden assigns him to carry plates until his mouth discovers the weight his hands already know. Their counsel sharpens leaders without drawing blood. To a captain who wins and then sulks because applause was small, a shield maiden says, "Your men ate." It is impossible to pout after that. To a skald who smooths the rough out of a tale until it slips, she says, "Put the rock back. We need something to push against." To a god with a hammer who is tempted to solve a knot by striking the table, she says nothing at all, only tilts her head toward the child in the corner, who is learning courage by watching manners. Thor grins and sits down. Even thunder prefers to be useful. They keep the red edge from stealing into the room. When talk becomes a contest, they break it with a task. "Help me lift this cauldron," and the hands that wanted to point find better employment. When grief threatens to flood, they put a bowl in the mourner's fingers and say, pour. Liquid finds its level, so does sorrow. When anger is honest and needs air, they take it to the practice dummies and let it make a clean thunder where walls are thick and ears are kind. Nothing festers under their attention. Everything is given an appropriate exit or a proper job. Children adore them because they do not patronize. A shield maiden hands a wooden shield to a child barely tall enough to hold it, and asks, "Who will you protect?" The answer changes a life. She teaches little ones the first oath, "I will not be the weather other people must survive." The small mouths repeat it as if tasting sugar for the first time. Later, when a scuffle starts in a corner over a game piece, a girl steps between and says, "On your right," and the room, hearing the echo, smiles into its cups. They are also auditors. Oaths pass through them on the way to the bench. "Say it shorter," they insist, because short promises are harder to wiggle out of. Say who measures, because accountability loves a name. Say when, because someday is where cowards hide. They are not impressed by grand declarations that forget the sink. You vowed to hold the gate? Good. What gate? Which night? With whose help? And where is the list of what you need? In this way, valor becomes logistics, which is how realms survive winters and last stands both. If a shield maiden falls, the hall learns again how to stand. Valkyries arrive with unusual gentleness, even ravens come low. The bench that kept her cup is left empty for a week, the exact length of time it takes for the hall to discover how many small tasks she made look like air. Then they divide her chores and discover she had not called them chores. She had called them the work. Freya will sometimes visit on such evenings, run her hand along the shield's rim, and hum a tune that has no name and fixes nothing and makes everything bearable. What is their secret? It is not mystery, only practice. They choose usefulness over theatre, rhythm over urgency, mercy over drama, and they repeat those choices until even their silence teaches. When the last dawn leans its pale antlers against the roof, the line will steady because they taught it to. And tonight, when sleep hunts your thoughts, it will find them easier prey because a voice that never needed to shout has already said, "Breathe, lower the shoulder, aim with kindness. You will do as you're told, and morning will thank you." Every practice in Valhalla has a shadow to spar with, the day when practice ends and purpose begins. No one names it at breakfast, no one needs to. Ragnarok is the North's most impolite truth, an ending promised with the same calm certainty as winter. The point is not to avoid it. The point is to arrive ready, the way a ship arrives at a storm with tight seams and sober crew. Preparation begins in small places. A buckle repaired before it breaks. A stance corrected before it costs a friend. A habit made honest before it becomes a flaw. The hall speaks of the last dawn as if it were just another morning with stricter grading. "You will receive no partial credit," Tyr says dryly, and the room smiles because they have learned to enjoy accuracy. The training field is not a theatre, it is a rehearsal studio. Moves are polished until they survive surprise. Odin conducts councils like a shipmaster reading sky. No oratory, only weather reports. He sits with ravens and captains and asks questions the way a surgeon asks after fever. Where does panic travel first? Which line is brave but brittle? Which leader inspires trust and which only obedience? He changes as little as possible and exactly what is needed. The wise learn to copy this. Minimal drama, maximal effect. He calls for drills that look tedious until you notice how many disasters they cure. Again, he says, and the word contains an oath. Practice will be the last thing that leaves us. Thor teaches morale as if it were a craft. He proves that thunder can be aim, not noise. When lines tire, he arrives like a well-timed joke and a well-timed hammer, reminding bodies that courage has a rhythm. He pairs the strong with the careful and forces them to trade virtues. He makes champions run as shield men and shy fighters call commands until their voices discover they were built for it. When someone asks if laughter belongs in war, he shrugs. Yes, he says, because despair does. Tyr tends the law that war must obey if it wishes to call itself defence. He walks the boundary where necessity ends and cruelty begins, and he paints the line in bright colour. You may strike fast, he says, but not blind. You may pursue, but not past the point where victory becomes hunger. In his presence, leaders memorize the rule that saves nations from winning wrong. You are allowed no triumph. You cannot explain to a child. Those who try anyway find their next week spent teaching the youngest in the hall. Instruction rinses vanity. Frigg keeps a different watch. She reads the air for omens and the faces for wear. She adjusts schedules like a very gentle general, sending the exhausted to the forge where the clink of work steadies thought, sending the restless to the infirmary where holding another's pain teaches steadiness, sending the over-proud to the kitchens where humility and fire share a language. If she speaks of the last dawn, it is only to remind the room that grief will be part of the weather and must be planned for like rain. Cloaks ready, fires banked, songs chosen for their spine. The Valkyries change their patrols. They begin to read not only who should rise, but who should remain, for some work must be done behind walls and under roofs even when horizons burn. They test messengers on routes with no landmarks. They test quartermasters on shortages that seem designed by malice. They test captains by removing 2 pieces from the board and seeing whether kindness survives the arithmetic. Mercy, one says, is a position as well as a feeling. Hold it. And the Shieldmaidens shift the curriculum. The drills lean toward cooperation that cannot fail. The line learns to bend without breaking, to surge without scattering, to retreat without disgrace. Backward is a direction, a Shieldmaiden says, not a confession. They rehearse losing ground and finding each other again. They rehearse handoffs so smooth that a child watching would think victory had 4 hands. They teach the hall's youngest the oath that matters most on loud days. I will make my strength a place others can stand. Skalds do their work. They edit the future. They take old songs that ended in boast and retune them to end in belonging. They make heroes plural. They write refrains short enough to carry in the mouth while breathing hard. They teach the benches to answer in chorus, because the last dawn will ask for voices that cannot be singled out and cut. At night they collect the day's best courage, not the brightest, the best, and stitch it into verses that sleep can memorize. Even the forge trains for the end. The smith teaches edges to listen, to bite only what must be bitten. He oils scabbards, and lectures the room on the superiority of prevention to repair. He lays out toolkits, and makes every knight pack one. You are all quartermasters now, he says, and no one objects. The infirmary stocks not only salves, but also stories that can be told in under a minute and still lift a man from fear to duty. A good tale, placed right, is a tourniquet. Hope, here, is not a mood. It is logistics. Granaries are counted without lying. Routes are scouted without swagger. Allies are honoured without flattery. Envoys ride to Folkvanger and Hell, and the Barrow Hills and the halls below the sea, not to beg but to align. When the sky turns, Odin says, every door we kept friendly will buy an hour. An hour, well used, can become a lifetime for someone far from the plane. This is the arithmetic of mercy. And all the while, the hall refuses to live as if doom were already here. It eats well, it laughs often, it writes letters, it practices tenderness as seriously as it practices thrust and guard. Children are given more songs, not fewer. Lovers are reminded to be brave in the ordinary ways, forgive quickly, return what you borrow, admit when you are wrong before the world has to do the admitting for you. The last dawn is not allowed to steal a single evening's decency. Some nights Odin lets the room ask questions. Will we win? Someone always says, young enough to believe the word has only one meaning. The Allfather's one eye finds the hearth. We will buy time, he answers. We will buy each other. We will purchase spring for someone we will never meet. He does not gild it. He does not grieve it. He makes it a task. The hall nods, and the nod is consent to the price. And then there is the quiet practice no one names, dying well without breaking the living. Warriors teach each other how to hand off command in a single breath. Friends rehearse the sentence that closes a debt and opens a future. You know what to do. Lovers learn, reluctantly and bravely, the look that says go instead of stay. The room grows fluent in farewell that does not collapse into despair. This fluency will save more lives than any blade. When the omens sharpen, there is no trumpet. There is a morning like others and a light that feels newly exact. The staff thumps the ground. Work, practice, begin. And everyone does the ordinary things they have done 1,000 times, but cleaner. Boots tied right the first time. Bread chewed slowly. Kisses given without complaint. Armour checked for the friend beside you, not your own back. It is astonishing how much excellence fits inside a day when no one performs and everyone serves. If the last dawn finds them, it will find them ready in the only way readiness can be real, not with grand speeches but with habits that hold under weight. And if night falls again, as it may, they will eat, laugh, mend and sleep. Then they will do it again tomorrow. Because the point of training for endings is not to stop living. It is to live so well that even the end must admit it has arrived among professionals. The hall is far, but its habits walk the earth. Long before a skald lifts a harp, men and women in Midgard repeat Valhalla's grammar without knowing where they learned it. You can see it in small towns that lean against cold rivers, in fishing villages with nets drying like flags, in farms where dawn shows up early and supper arrives honest. The North's afterlives are stories, yes, but they are also instructions, folded into the day the way salt disappears into bread and makes every bite more itself. Begin with the farewell that is not a goodbye, the ship burial. Keel waits on green grass, ribs upright like a rib cage deciding to be roof instead of armour. The village comes with quiet work, planks lifted shoulder high, tar warmed, nails counted by a boy who will one day count his own crew. The dead are placed where the living would have wanted to sit, a hand near the tiller, a foot near the oar, a head turned toward the harbour mouth as if listening for weather. Grave goods follow, not as bribes to gods, but as memories with handles. An axe that earned respect by cutting more wood than bone. The comb that made a face neat before decisions. The cup that tasted of company more than drink. A woman tucks a small bag of soil under a palm, because even sailors need a little earth to steady their dreams. Fire takes the hull cleanly. Smoke writes a message any sky can read. Ashes know which wind is theirs. It looks like ceremony. It is also an audit. What did we value? What do we send forward? What do we promise to keep? Inland, under mounds soft as sheep and thyme, the barrow custom keeps its practical kindness. A cairn rises 1 stone per friend, not to weigh the dead down, but to give the living something to lift. Children bring the smooth rocks, elders bring the stories that match them. This one for the day he left when the roof leaked. Stone sits, memory sits. A hill becomes a sentence you can read with your feet. On high days the village eats near the mound, because grief digests better with bread. Someone sings the low verse that straightens backs without asking tears to stop. No one pretends the dead hear every word. Everyone behaves as if they might, which is the point. Respect trains the tongue even when the audience is unsure. The skalds travel and harvest courage. They sleep where they can and listen where they must. In winter, when roads crunch and breath makes its own white commentary, they bring rooms together the way a fire brings hands. Their songs do not flatter. They change names to protect pride and sharpen lessons, but the shape stays true. A young man who learned to stand only when a woman said, "On your right." A queen who measured a winter and kept the children fat in the face. A fisherman who returned a coin dropped by a thief because hunger had already punished enough. These stories move from hall to hut and back, and each retelling makes the listeners try 1 notch harder the next morning. It is fame's best use. Crafts hold the echo. A blacksmith hangs a small runed strip of iron above his door with 3 strokes. True, plumb, bare. Not as magic, but as policy. He tempers edges cooler, because he's seen what happens when heat goes to a tool's head. A weaver knots a tiny valknut at the end of the rug where the table's chair will sit, a reminder that choosing steadiness is a daily art. A boat builder oils the keel and says, "Enough," aloud, because enough is the boundary that keeps pride from drowning crews. Law keeps it too, in cart tracks and courtrooms that smell of wool. A local thing called the Thing gathers under a sky that does not mind witnesses. Disputes arrive like weather. Solutions stand like tents. Men talk, women talk. Elders cough when talk grows cleverer than correct. Tyre's rule passes down simplified. Do not win wrong. A thief returns thrice what he took because trust is the currency, and it needs a better exchange rate than silver. A brawler lifts barrels at the well for a month until his arms remember that strength was meant to be useful first. Impressive second. When a judge gets a raise of voice, someone from the benches says, "Enough," and the judge nods, because dignity is cheapest when borrowed from the room. In homes, the northern echo is almost invisible. It shows up as a broom that leans near the door so mud never becomes metaphor. It shows up as the sentence a mother makes her children say before they leave. "I will not be the weather other people must survive." It shows up when a father apologizes the same day a mistake lands. Contrition, like bread, goes stale if you hoard it. Meals follow the field's order. Feed the quiet first. Listen to the small report of a day saved by an unnoticed hand. Give news the time to be complete before decisions snatch at it. The old sleep near the fire where stories steep. The young sleep near the door where weather is rehearsed. No one explains this arrangement. It explains itself every time a knight asks the house to be a ship. Trade remembers the hall's logistics. A merchant's best boast isn't a profit. It's a road kept passable by his coin. He funds a bridge where carts bog, then prices his grain fair enough that people can bring him news without bringing him resentment. He treats luck like a neighbour, not a saviour. When a cargo arrives whole despite storms, He thanks the crew by name and the carpenter with money, and the gods with a gift to the poorest table on his street. He is not pious. He is thorough. War, when it visits, meets communities that have rehearsed not panic but cooperation. Shields lock with the same memory that locks fingers during spring floods. The line bends without breaking. Retreat is called as a direction, not a disgrace. And the rear guard isn't punishment. It is honour given to the steady. Women carry water where water is strategy. Children carry messages where small feet slide between dangers large ones would trip. The wounded are bound by hands that have tied 1,000 other knots. The dead are named quickly and correctly, because the living need accuracy more than drama. In the quiet years between storms, echoes grow taller. A school by a river teaches letters on tablets and oaths on breath. Keep faith once pledged. Speak truth as if the land could hear you. Spare where justice is satisfied. Children roll these rules in their mouths the way teeth roll sweet berries, at first for taste, then for strength. A girl keeps a wooden shield under her bed and a book of songs under her pillow. Her mother calls her to fetch water, and she does, because water is the drill that makes all other drills honest. Even mischief is trained to be useful. A boy takes apart a latch, gets the door stuck, receives a patient lecture about locks and neighbours, puts the latch back together, and invents a kinder hinge while apologising. The village laughs and uses the hinge for 50 years. Loki would smile. Freya would keep a sharp eye. Odin would add a note to a ledger that counts improvements and the foolishness that bought them. On saints' days or naming days or days when the sky simply looks like it is holding its breath, the community gathers and plays the games that practice cooperation without calling it that. Tug of war teaches surge and give. Wrestling teaches where not to put weight. Taffel teaches how to protect a king by protecting commoners. Crowns are paper, victories are bread. Nobody cheats because the stakes are habits. At night, when chores have let go and doors are latched against wind, a family may sit on the threshold a minute longer and watch the stars try to be numerous. Someone will say, if the last dawn comes, we will do as we do today. It is not bravado, it is a declaration of inventory. Wood is stacked, water is clean, words are ready, hands know their work, and the table has an extra bowl that is nobody's and therefore everyone's. The echo's not a ghost. It is a promise travelling in both directions. From hall to home, from home back to hall, a loop that keeps a people brave without needing to see gold roofs to remember why. Valhalla is a lesson disguised as a legend. It says courage is a craft, not a mood. Train in daylight, heal by evening, feast in good company, and rest without fear. It honours many doors, Folkvanger's meadow, Hell's quiet house, the sea's green guest room, the ancestral hill, and calls each worthy by its true work. It binds oaths to outcomes, trims luck to size, and weaves wyrd into habits a village can borrow. In its shield-roofed light, strength becomes kindness with aim. In Midgard, that echo becomes bridges kept, fair prices made, quarrels settled, and tables with an extra bowl. The last dawn may come. If it does, we meet it as we meet every morning, with steady stance, clean tools, and names spoken right. Until then, let the aurora fold its soft banners. Let ravens settle. Breathe. Sleep where stories keep watch. Tomorrow we practice being brave again, together. Thank you for joining us on this journey into the sagas of the North. If these whispered legends have brought a sense of peace to your mind, you can help other weary souls find this quiet sanctuary by subscribing and activating the notification bell. Your gentle support ensures that more stories from the great and misty halls of the past can be told here each and every week. Until the next saga calls to you on the wind, may your slumber be deep, your dreams be adventurous, and your rest be absolute. Sleep well.